The internet was presented as the ultimate engine for personal expression, a landscape where anyone could broadcast a unique identity. Yet digital culture often produces homogeneous repetition. We see millions performing the same formats, audio clips, and opinions in a loop of digital mimicry. Psychoanalyst Erich Fromm anticipated this contradiction. Working in the mid-20th century, Fromm identified a specific tension in the human character. We naturally resist external control, but absolute freedom causes a distinct, paralyzing terror. Medieval society functioned through primary bonds, unconscious structural ties to the land, the guild, and the church. These bonds restricted mobility, but provided a sense of belonging and a clear place in the hierarchy. The rise of industrial capitalism and the Reformation shattered these ties. This process of individuation brought political agency, but it simultaneously stripped the individual of material and spiritual security. Modernity granted the individual independence only to leave them standing alone in an indifferent market. Achieving this negative freedom created an existential vacuum, and people began searching for ways to escape the isolation of their own autonomy. Fromm defined negative freedom as freedom from external constraints. It is a state of non-restriction that lacks inherent meaning. It tells you what you are no longer forced to do, without providing a reason for existing. This state carries a heavy psychological cost. When an individual is no longer anchored by a fixed social order, they become responsible for their own meaning in a vast world. This produces a sense of powerlessness and a deep-seated anxiety that most find intolerable. Negative freedom branches into 3 compulsive adaptations designed to alleviate this panic. By surrendering individuality to merge with something larger, the person avoids the burden of choice. While the 20th century saw masses flee into authoritarianism, our current era relies on the mechanism of automaton conformity. In a democratic society, we rarely see vertical hierarchies demanding submission. Instead, we see a horizontal pressure to blend in. We escape our isolation by becoming exactly like everyone else. Automaton conformity turns the individual into a social chameleon. You adopt the thoughts, behaviors, and aesthetics expected by the crowd to avoid the pain of being noticed as different. By disappearing into the gray collective, the loneliness of isolation vanishes. Fromm called this the marketing orientation. Under modern economic structures, the human personality is experienced as a transactional commodity. Success is no longer measured by who you are, but by how well you can sell, package, and advertise yourself to others. This orientation dominates the digital attention economy. We package our daily lives as competitive brands, curating our experiences to meet market demands. We treat our own existence as a product designed for external consumption. Recommendation algorithms accelerate this process. They reward specific behaviors with quantifiable validation, training users to alter their personality to harvest views and likes. We optimize our behavior to satisfy the machine's requirements for visibility. Through this cycle, the self-conception tethers to the algorithm's desire. We exist only to the extent that we are validated by the digital crowd, completing the escape into conformity. Continuous market optimization splits the psyche. A severe fracture develops between the real self, the source of genuine impulses, and a performative pseudo-self constructed for social approval. Eventually, this hollow mask eclipses the authentic identity. The pseudo-self operates through pseudo-thinking. We adopt opinions pushed by influencers or data feeds, yet we falsely experience them as our own rational thoughts. We are mimicking external data while believing we are thinking for ourselves. This is mirrored by pseudo-feeling. We perform socially expected emotions, like curated positivity or performative outrage, to secure our place in the network. The emotion functions as a cultural script, masking an underlying numbness. Because the pseudo-self is artificial, it requires constant external validation to remain stable. It has no internal center. This drives a compulsive need to stay locked into the network, refreshing the feed to ensure the mask is still being seen. Through this mechanism, the individual represses their authentic identity. We disappear into the digital crowd while convinced that we are expressing our unique personality. When the pseudo-self fails to achieve market validation, or when our social environment blocks our fundamental need to create, the psyche reacts. Fromm argued that humans have an inherent drive to transcend their passive state and become creators. If the path to creation is blocked, the need for transcendence inverts into destructiveness. Fromm defined this not as a biological instinct, but as a reactive passion born of unlived life. If one cannot build, one must destroy to prove one's potency. Inside digital networks, actual centers of power feel unreachable, leaving the individual feeling powerless. This blocked energy manifests as digital vandalism. Trolling and harassment provide a hollow, momentary sense of agency by tearing down the shared meanings and public discourse of others. When individuals are stripped of the agency to build, they regain a false sense of power by systematically destroying. Destructiveness becomes a desperate attempt to feel significant in a world that ignores the authentic self. Deleting a profile or retreating into neo-authoritarian tribalism are false solutions to modern anxiety. These choices merely exchange one form of submission for another, leaving the underlying isolation untouched. The resolution is positive freedom, the freedom to act. This is the spontaneous and creative use of the integrated personality. It allows the individual to relate to the world without sacrificing their unique independence. This state is built on two pillars: spontaneous activity and productive love. Productive love is the ability to unite with others while preserving the integrity of both parties. It bridges the gulf of isolation without requiring the erasure of the self. Fromm called this orientation biophilia, a deep love for life, growth, and development. It is the structural antidote to a transactional digital economy that views the personality as a commodity. The rebellion against algorithmic conformity isn't just about disconnecting. It is the psychological work of cultivating an authentic self that is rooted in its own intellectual and emotional capacities, rather than the validation of a screen.